This is one of those things you look forward to seeing for all your life. Today we're in London and we are seeing some of the major sites, and this is a great itinerary. I will drop it down in the description box below if you would like to do it as well. We're here at Westminster Abbey. This is one of the stops. We are with a family of 4, so it will be a shorter itinerary than what is fully down in the description below, I do suspect, and it's supposed to rain later today. On our last episode, we explored the Warner Brothers studio tour and everything Harry Potter, and it was so much fun exploring the worlds that we love and introducing it to our kids. If you want to see what it was like, be sure to watch that episode after this one. But today we're hitting the highlights here in London. We're starting the day off here on the bus on the way to see some of the top sites in London as part of our 26-day adventure here in... This is our second bit of the day. I'm corrected by my 6-year-old. You know me, finding a hotel with breakfast is always a priority, especially when we have our little kids. When we're traveling, we want to feel fed and full and ready to go first thing in the morning. Let me know if you need help deciding where to stay when you come to London. Yes, we always start the day with breakfast, she says. So we are on our 26-day adventure across Europe. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of those adventures of our family of 4 traveling across the globe, trying to get lots of adventures and practical tips for you. The day started with us heading out from our hotel and making our way into central London for what would become one of our biggest sightseeing days of the trip. We had a very full route planned, and honestly, I was not completely sure if we were going to get it done with 2 little kids, a stroller, and a baby on the way. But this was London, and there were certain views and landmarks and experiences that I had dreamed about seeing in person for years. So now the day ended up being packed in the best way. You're going to see exactly how much we got to do and how well the route actually worked. And it was going exactly according to plan. Until it didn't, because right near the end of the day, we hit one of those family travel moments that was very stressful at the time, but now it's pretty funny. Before we get there, let's start with how we got around London, because that ended up being a huge part of why this day worked as well as it did. One thing I really loved about London was how easy it was to get around without a car. Between buses, walking, the underground, you can get almost anywhere you need to go. And honestly, taking the bus seemed to be a big part of the experience for us. The girls loved sitting on the double-decker buses, and for us, it was also a really practical way to see more of the city without making everyone walk every single step. Now, if you're visiting London with kids, I would not underestimate the buses. They may take a little longer than the underground sometimes, but they are easier with little kids. Strollers, snacks, tired legs, and all the things you end up carrying on a family travel day. And sometimes the bus ride itself felt like sightseeing. One of our favorite rides was actually today when we rode on the 341 and we got to pass places like Chancery Lane and the Royal Courts of Justice, and it gave us one of the most incredible views over London, and that made the whole ride feel like it was part of a sightseeing tour. Our first major stop was the Westminster area, and this is where London really starts to feel like London that you've seen over and over again. You have Big Ben, the Houses of Parliament, Westminster Abbey, the red buses passing by, crowds of people, and you're feeling like you're standing in the places you've seen in photos, movies, books, and history lessons for your entire life. One thing I really wanted to do that day was walk across Westminster Bridge, specifically because that is the view of London I feel like I've seen millions of times. It's in all the movies, travel photos, postcards, guidebooks, and all the classic things you think of when you think of London. It's just such an iconic London view. But before we crossed the bridge, we wanted to find the best spot for family pictures. Instead of trying to take photos right in the middle of all the crowds, we went down the steps on the left side of the bridge before crossing. And that was one of the best little decisions we made throughout the entire day. This was one of the spots I researched, and I'm so glad that I did. And now you're going to know about it too, because you're able to take pictures with the classic London backdrop, but there are not a ton of people directly behind you. It was calmer, it gave the kids a second to pause, and the photos turned out so much better than if we would have tried to squeeze them in front of a crowded walkway, and you get the full backdrop behind you without you having a really close-up of your face. Honestly, it was better than a postcard, but more on that later. We had been looking forward to this part of the trip for so long, and even though it was a little busy and a little chaotic, it was also one of the moments where we just had to stop and take it all in. The tricky thing with this area is the exact place you get dropped off the bus matters. If you're using public transportation, pay attention to your stop because a small difference can change your walking route, especially with kids. We are trying to keep the day manageable, so we wanted the order of our stops to make sense and avoid that unnecessary backtracking that was inevitable if you pick the wrong bus. With adults, a little extra walking may not matter, but with kids, it absolutely does. Now, seeing Big Ben in person was one of those classic London moments that I was looking forward to. It's definitely one of the most obvious things to do in London, but sometimes the obvious things are famous for a reason. The architecture is stunning. It really does feel special to stand there and see it in real life, and I was amazed at all the little details. How many movies has this been in? Anyone know? Our girls may not have fully understood the full history or significance of the Houses of Parliament and many of the other buildings that we would see throughout the day, but that doesn't mean that the stop was lost on them. Now, for us, travel is not about expecting our young kids to remember every date, leader, or historical detail that we might be learning as adults, but it is about giving them exposure to other parts of the world and helping them connect to what they've seen in books, movies, school lessons, projects, and conversations that we have intentionally had at home prior to traveling to the location, prior to going to these real places that now they actually have had the opportunity to visit. That's one of the reasons we like to prepare them before the trip. Before we travel, we try to introduce them to places we are visiting through stories, videos, books, movies, activities, history lessons, and when we finally see those places in real life, it already means something to them. Then, while they're there, we talk about it in little pieces, and then after the trip, we keep coming back to those memories when we read, watch, or learn about those places again. They may not remember every detail, but they remember standing by the River Thames. They remember Big Ben. They remember the red buses and the buildings, the crowds, and the feeling of being somewhere that looked completely different than home. And I think that matters because sometimes the goal is not for kids to master the history of a place in one visit. It's mostly to plant the seed and give them real-world connections and let the memory grow over time. From there, we made our way to Westminster Abbey, and it was one of those places I wanted to see in person so bad. Even if we weren't planning to do the full tour that day, you do not have to go inside every major landmark in order for it to be worth seeing. Now, of course, Westminster Abbey is incredible, and there is so much amazing history inside, and if you have time, interest, and budget, it can absolutely be worth touring. But for us, on this specific day, with the kids, the walking, the weather, and everything else that we were trying to fit in, seeing the outside was enough. It's Westminster Abbey! Oh, I'm geeking out right now. We took it all in, talked about it, looked around, and kept moving. And that was the right decision for our family that day. Don't worry, Westminster Abbey, I'll be back. We also went inside the gift shop, and that is where we got a couple of our traditional souvenirs that we get at every location that we go to. This is where we found our London postcard. After Westminster, we started walking towards Buckingham Palace. Now, this is one of the reasons I think this route works so well for a first-time London day. On the way to Buckingham Palace, we walked through St. James Park. This ended up being one of the sweetest parts of the day. It gave everyone a little bit of breathing room after all the crowds near Westminster, and it was such a nice way to break up the walk before getting to Buckingham Palace. There were birds, water, beautiful trees, flowers, and a view that felt very classic London. And one of the most fun details about St. James Park is the pelicans. The park's famous for their colony of great white pelicans, which have been part of the park's history since the 1600s. The little detail made the walk feel even more interesting, and it gives the girls something specific to look for besides just another pretty park. And if you're traveling with kids, parks are not just pretty, they are strategic. They give kids the chance to move a little more freely. They give adults a chance to breathe and create a break without needing to fully stop for the day. We also grabbed a little snack along the way, and I remember thinking it looked a little bit like a cinnamon roll. I think that's what the kids were expecting, but it was definitely a little bit crispier and crunchy, and I loved it a little more than the kids did, but that was pretty normal when we travel. Sometimes when you buy the fun local snack, the kids are unimpressed, and that's okay. More for me. Are you looking for a great spot to see the changing of the guard without waiting in long lines, especially if you have little kids? Well, this might be a good option. One of the big things that you're going to want to see on this itinerary is the changing of the guard. Now, I will say right away, watching the changing of the guard with kids is a little different than watching it with adults. If you want the classic front row view at Buckingham Palace, you usually need to arrive much earlier than we did and wait. Now that can work for some families, but for us, standing in a crowded spot for a long time with little kids was not the best plan or the best use of our time, in our opinion. And honestly, I wanted a different view anyway. So instead, we watched part of it from along the route near the mall. We timed our arrival really well for this view, but if you get there a little earlier, you might actually get to see the new guard leave the station and walk along the mall with them. So that's a really cool experience if you want to take advantage of it. We did not have enough time for that, especially with little legs trying to keep up, but even from where we were, it still worked out really well. We got to see the guards, hear the music, experience the excitement, but we did not have to commit to being packed into the largest crowd right in front of the palace gates, or giving our 6-year-old a piggyback ride while running to get there in time. Now, if you are visiting London with kids, I would seriously consider this approach. You might not get that exact postcard view, but you may have a better overall experience. And that's what we look for. And if you watch close to the spot where they turn onto the mall like we did, once they pass, you can cross towards the center and get an unobstructed view of the mall and Buckingham Palace for your own photo. Win-win.
This guard played music. And the other set of guards with us holding guns and dangerous things.
Now, after seeing the guards, we made our way towards Buckingham Palace, and this was one of those places that felt so surreal to see in person. It's so recognizable. Even if your kids do not fully understand the monarchy and all the history behind it, they can still feel that it is so big of a deal. The palace area was busy, of course, but it was still worth seeing. We could still hear the guards playing, which made it feel like the whole area was part of the experience, even after we moved closer to the palace. We took photos, looked around, and let the girls experience one of the most famous landmarks in London. Would I plan an entire day around Buckingham Palace with little kids? Probably not. But would I include it as part of a Westminster, St. James Park, Central London walking route? Absolutely. And could I come to London for the first time without experiencing Buckingham Palace, even in the littlest bit? Definitely not. So this combination worked really well for us. We chose not to tour Buckingham Palace on this visit because the family tour was not available at the time, and we had already decided to tour Windsor Castle later on in the week. So be sure to subscribe if you want to see how that went, because Windsor ended up being another really memorable day. Now by this point, we needed lunch. And if you're traveling with kids, lunch can make or break the rest of the day. Over the years, as we've traveled with our kids, we've learned that not every meal has to be fancy or a perfectly local, beautifully aesthetic meal. Sometimes you just need food that everyone will actually eat. On this day, pizza was the win. And actually several days after this, as you will soon find out if you're following along. I think sometimes people feel pressure when they travel to make every single meal a cultural experience, but on a long family trip, that's just not always realistic. We're walking a lot, the kids are tired, I was pregnant, and we had more sightseeing ahead of us. Simple, familiar meal was exactly what we needed. And after lunch, everyone was in a much better mood. Now, if you're following our walking route, you're going to want to head towards the Natural History Museum. This was another stop I really was excited about because it felt like a good balance after a morning of landmarks and walking. We made it to the Natural History Museum.
This is it! This is it! This is it!
Yay! London has so many incredible museums, and many of them are great for families. The Natural History Museum was the obvious choice, at least in my eyes, because it is so beautiful. Before you even get to the exhibits, the building itself is stunning. It feels grand and detailed and almost like a cathedral plus science and nature all tied into one.
Look, it's a woolly mammoth!
What do you think of that in the sky?
Oh my.
The girls enjoyed seeing the animals, the rocks, the gemstones, and some of the other exhibits, and it gave us a different kind of experience from the rest of the day. We also used the amazing architecture to keep everyone engaged, especially our youngest, who sometimes needed a little mission to stay focused. So as we walked through the museum, we looked for animals carved into the building, and they're everywhere. So if you go here, definitely see how many you can find. Turned the building itself into a little scavenger hunt, which was perfect because we could look, point, search, and stay involved, even when we were moving through exhibits that might have been a little more interesting to one member of the family compared to the rest. I would definitely recommend something like this, mixing your outdoor sightseeing with an indoor stop, especially if the weather is unpredictable, and in London, the weather is almost always part of the story. The Natural History Museum worked really well because it gave the girls something to look at that was different from buildings, palaces, and monuments, and we as adults were perfectly happy walking around outside looking at historic sites all day, but the kids needed a little variety, and I really enjoyed the museum itself. They needed something they could explore and point at, something they recognized, and something that felt a little more hands-on or visual. And the museum gave us that. It was a great option because it let us be indoors for a while, thankfully right as it started to rain. So this would be an ideal spot to go on a rainy or chilly day in London. If you're planning a London itinerary with kids, I would definitely consider adding one museum to your day. But I would not try to do 5 museums in one trip just because they're free or famous. Pick one that fits your family best and enjoy it. Now, no family travel day would be complete without at least one moment that feels a little chaotic at the time and hilarious later. For us, that moment happened on the bus. And we were separated by a bus. My husband got off before us and we didn't. I'm not gonna leave them.
But that's like Daddy.
We were on our way back to our hotel and somehow my husband got off the bus, but the girls and I didn't quite make it. The doors closed and the bus kept going and suddenly we were separated. Thankfully, it was not a huge disaster. We had our phones, we knew where we were going, and we were able to figure it out. But in the moment, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, especially for the kids who were really distraught that we were separated for a bit. But that's part of traveling. Things go wrong, people get tired, someone misses the stop, and we need snacks at the worst possible moment. Plans have to shift. But usually those are the stories you remember later, and not because they're perfect, but because you figure it out together. Looking back, I think this is one really good day in London for our family. After planning dozens of different vacations in dozens of different cities, lots of itineraries over the years, I think this has been one of my favorite days. This is the kind of family travel day I love looking back on because it wasn't just about checking off the landmarks. It was about seeing places we had talked about at home, connecting the books and history and movies to the real place, watching the girls experience the city in a way that felt different from home, and making memories together in the middle of the walking, snacks, weather, and all the chaos. Problem solving together is one of my favorite ways to build family bonds. Now, tomorrow we'll take you on another amazing London walking route that brought us to even more of the city's most iconic spots. So make sure you subscribe for that next video. And if you're planning a trip to London, I hope this helped you see what a realistic sightseeing day could look like. Don't forget I have our London itinerary resources, walking routes, family travel planning tools, all linked below, all included in our free travel resource library. And if you're following along with our Europe series, make sure you subscribe because next we're heading to the Tower of London and so much more. Adventure is possible, even with little kids. And we're here to help you travel more together.